So I've been in a bit of a funk lately, like creatively in the gutter. Just generally like, I don't know, I like to keep busy, and for the past couple months I really haven't been, and it sucks. So I thought if I sort of forced myself to make this video, maybe that would help. Okay, I'm doing this one-handed, so this is going to look bad. I don't fold things. Yeah, so I've been thinking a lot about nostalgia lately, because when you're in this kind of headspace, it's easy to look either to what you're going to be doing soon or what you used to be doing. And last year I was writing an essay on Stranger Things. One of my arguments was about how it capitalizes on the recent obsession with nostalgia. You know, like all the reboots and remakes and recycled content. And when I was researching for this part of the essay, I came across this thing that talked about, I don't remember who or like what time period, but basically there was this society that used to really strongly believe that nostalgia was a sin, because, you know, it's romanticizing the past, you know, it's misremembering, and they thought that was terrible. And I remember like reading it at the time. I remember thinking, I really hope future me isn't nostalgic for this time, the time when, oh shit. Yeah, so I remember I was writing this essay and then I came across this thing about nostalgia, and I remember thinking when I read that, I was like, I really hope that future me isn't nostalgic for this time. And I should mention, when I was writing this essay, I was on exchange in Canada. Exchange is like the most interesting, exciting, overwhelming, like the biggest thing I've ever done, which is weird because it was like I was gone for like 5 months, and it's almost been that long since I've been back now, and I'm still thinking about it all the time. And like, while it is like incredible and you meet all these cool people, go to all these amazing places, it's tough too. Like, it can be kind of really daunting and kind of lonely and anxious, and just there's a lot that you go through a lot, because I mean, turns out sending yourself to the other side of the world where you don't know anyone or like the place at all, yeah, it turns out that's not always, you know, happiness and excitement 24/7. Who would have thought? Yeah, so I was in one of these bad moods, thinking, you know, I don't know, I started to think that I wasn't doing exchange right, that I wasn't like meeting enough people or going to enough places, which is ridiculous, but that's how I felt at the time. And I just remember thinking, future me, don't forget about all this, don't forget about these bad moods and the days where you just like didn't do anything, where you just like sat in your room and watched a couple movies or did some grocery shopping. Like, don't be nostalgic for this time, and just remember the good bits, remember it all. Well, if past me were watching this somehow, then sorry, but I'm nostalgic as hell. Like, I think nostalgia is okay though. I don't think it's a sin. Or if it is, I don't know, send me to hell, but I don't think it's that bad. Yeah, I think nostalgia is okay if you kind of do it in the right way. Another thing I was reading about when I was doing this essay on Stranger Things is misremembering past or false past through nostalgia. And I talk about the concept of the 80s in Stranger Things isn't the real 80s. You know, like the main characters, they're all nice. They're not like racist or homophobic or anything, because we're watching it through the context of today. We're watching it through our own lens that they wouldn't have had back then. Whereas if you watch like an 80s movie, the main characters are more likely to say something, you know, offensive that wouldn't have been back then, because then they had different societal values than we do. And it's the same like with the soundtrack. If you listen to the soundtrack of Stranger Things, it's like all of the best songs from the 80s. But if you listen to a soundtrack of a song from the 80s, it'd probably be a bunch of songs you didn't know, and then maybe one or two by an artist that you've heard of. So yeah, I think that's the bad kind of nostalgia. But something I watched last year as well that was very fitting, in fact it couldn't have been more like accurately timed if you tried, and that is Lady Bird. I saw that at the Toronto Film Festival, which was like 2 weeks into my to my exchange, so it was like I was still getting used to being like by myself, and I'd travel to this big city all on my own, and then I saw the movie and died inside. I think we watch Lady Bird almost through the frame of Christine's nostalgia. You know, I don't think we're watching it like with her as she's experiencing it. I think we're seeing it the way that she looks back on that time. And I think that because of a few different things, like the way the camera movement works, it's very sort of deliberate. It knows the moments well. And the way you just sort of jump from moment to moment, like with no particular storyline other than just the last year of high school. I think that's kind of how we remember things. You just sort of remember a period of time and all the significant moments. I think Christine's nostalgic for it, but that doesn't mean that it's all romanticized necessarily. I mean, as far as we know, she's not remembering anything wrong. But like, she doesn't just remember the good bits. You know, she remembers a lot of the awkward bits, the sad bits, like a lot of bad times as well, but I think we sort of see it through her appreciation and a gained understanding of how those moments like shaped her as a person. I think it's kind of beautiful, you know? I think it shows how nostalgia can be good, because it's almost just like, you're not remembering something bad as something good now. Or you're not remembering things wrong. You're just, like, you're putting a frame on a time that you had. You're just appreciating something in a way that you couldn't at the time. It's like how every time I got Tim Hortons, I would think about how much I hated the coffee and I missed Australian coffee so much. But now that I'm back, I miss the donuts, I miss the muffins, I miss the Timbits. Oh, the Timbits. And the hot chocolates. It's like really enjoying living on campus and only having to wake up like 10 minutes before your class. Well, if you're lazy. But then realizing how much you actually like your long drives to work and to school, because you just love like singing along to songs in your car by yourself. It's thinking that you're not doing enough and that you're not doing exchange right, and only realizing how much you actually did once you got back, and how many people you missed and all the places you went to. It's not realizing how much you actually like your hometown until you live somewhere else for a bit. So yeah, maybe I'm a little bit nostalgic right now, but I don't mind. I think it's okay. Or maybe it's not, and I should just stop.